So Ryan, like, who are some of your best guys available? Are there some like player team fits that you would really maybe like to see?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite players available is Jalen Pietre, the
Yeah,
safety from Baylor. And I really love, I mean, I like him for a lot of teams. I think he's versatile enough that a lot of teams could use his skill set. He mostly played in the box at Baylor, but has played in the slot as well. Washington would be a great fit. I mean, we know they lost Landon Collins and they're still looking for somebody to fill that role. So, what he proved playing a really similar role to Landon Collins and Dave Aranda's defense at Baylor last season. I mean, he was a stud, like, and clearly highly intelligent. You can see the way he attacks the ball in the run game. Like, he is a step ahead of the offense often, and that's exactly what Washington needs in that role. So that's definitely my favorite player team fit that I'm hoping to see today.
yeah, that does make a lot of sense for a team that could potentially like play some more three safety, which is something they kind of
Yeah,
want
they
to
did a
do.
lot of it last year.
And
That's one of the reasons why I thought Kyle Hamilton was a very plausible pick for them in the first round.
you have it, and like, and Jalen Pietre, he's a guy I really like. Because I wrote about the safeties last week. Like, the more I dug into safeties, like the more I like him more than Dax Hill, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah.
Playing that kind of like slot safety role, because they both played like 75% of their snaps in the slot in 2021, and it wasn't always like slot man coverage, right? They were kind of like in the slot but moving into the box a little bit. But it's one of those things you can do. And Petrie was a guy who like blitzed 17% of the time, and not only was he blitzing well, like a super high pressure rate, so he was doing it at a high volume and high efficiency. I think he can cover really well. You can move him around. Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys. Same thing with Jaquan Brisker, the safety. Yeah, I think he gave me like the John Johnson vibes a little bit, like in the peak Rams John Johnson, where you can have him like kind of in the middle of the field. He can play deep. You can rotate him down into the box and play. And he had better slot coverage, I think, than he was given credit for too when he needed to do that. He's one of the guys I'm really looking forward to seeing. Channing Tindall, the Georgia linebacker, super athletic. He's the guy that you're going to say like he never started a game at Georgia, but like that was one of those things just because like who cares? He did play like a lot of snaps and was really good. Can cover well. Like he like never missed a tackle. A 5% broken and missed tackle rate, which is easily the best among these linebackers. When you look at what he can do in run defense, just really good. I in our write up that we wrote. For the site, I put him in Baltimore, which I think would be a really fun fit, especially if they're playing dime as often as they do, and they've taken some swings at linebacker that haven't completely worked out. I think Tindall could be a fun piece there. That's another guy I'm pretty excited to see.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of linebackers come off the board on day 2. This is a pretty deep class, even though it wasn't deep in round 1. There's a lot of really good athletes. He's definitely in the mix. His teammate Nakobe Dean, obviously, he was one of the ones that we talked about in round 1. And I think the only reason why he fell is probably because he didn't work out, and being a smaller guy, and people have a little bit of questions about his speed. That was probably the reason why he slipped out. But he's another one. I mean, similar to what I was talking about with Pietre, you can see that he's thinking one step ahead all the time.
Yeah.
And so that it kind of, even if he is a step slower than you'd like for a smaller linebacker, the fact that he has that ability to anticipate what's coming kind of like makes up for that, half step, being a half step slower than you'd like.
Yeah. And like you don't really have the green dot and the communication in college, but like he's the guy that was like kind of running the Georgia defense when they were on the field. So you can see that. Like I'm surprised he did not go and like and like Devin Lloyd went to
Green Bay taking Quay Walker over Nakobe Dean. That they're going to regret that. I'm pretty confident they're going to regret that. Quay Walker has the size, but I'll take the linebacker with the intelligence over the guy with size.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this beforehand. I'm surprised the two teams that made like a significant investment at linebacker were also the teams that used their first round pick at linebacker, and Green Bay going with Devondre Campbell, having that big deal. Jacksonville already paid Foy Olakun after. Again, I mentioned this in the write-up too, and I've tweeted it before. Jacksonville will never find a linebacker that they don't want to use a premium asset on. They are paying Joe Schobert and Miles Jack, neither of whom will be on the team in 2022, a combined like $14.7 million in dead money. And that's Levante David money. Levante David is making a cap hit of 14.7. That's the fourth highest for a linebacker. And Jacksonville is paying that for two guys who are not going to play on the team. One was cut 2 years ago. And they paid a linebacker in free agency. They used the first round pick on the linebacker here. So we did not get to Jacksonville in our potential losers, but like that was one of the more questionable decisions. Rich, what are you looking forward to on day 2?
I mean, this has always been like the dynasty day. Like, you know, this is the firewall. If your guys don't get selected today, it is an uphill climb if they're ever going to be relevant. So, you know, kind of all your favorite players. We're going to finally start to see some running backs drafted. Thank God we didn't have a running back drafted for the first round. We have to deal with that.
Just for the discourse alone, like
right, the tweets.
It saved us hours of time. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, NFL teams. Really just the Bills. Thank you, Bills. You were the only one people were kind of like up in arms about, even though we said DB the whole way. So this is, like I said, the firewall. We're looking for our favorite wide receivers, no matter what your flavor is. If you're a Sky Moore guy, George Pickens guy, whether you like Jalen Tolbert, Wan'Dale Robinson, you know, Alec Pierce, if you like Greg Dulcich, like this is the day, right? This is the day you're looking for those landing spots in that draft capital. You're hoping those guys don't fall out of today because it's darkness when you get to Saturday.
Yeah, it's one of those things like it, and there's some fun. I'm interested in kind of the tight ends. I want to see where these guys go. We like kind of had some late rumors that Cincinnati might have been the surprise pick with taking a tight end in the first round, and that obviously didn't happen.
It's not a bad tight end class. I know there's no Kyle Pitts, but like there's good players.
There's some interesting guys. You got Trey McBride. I'm interested where Jelani Woods goes. Right, the guy who like hasn't played a whole lot of tight end, but is like just one of the most athletic people. Like
I just want to see him on the field.
Yeah. So there's some guys. Greg Dulcich. There's a lot of interesting tight ends, so I think like having them in this sweet spot too. That's going to be.
If Dulcich goes to the Bengals, I'm gonna be like.
I was just, before you brought that up, Dan. I was just gonna say the same thing. I'm a little more interested in the tight ends. I think the receivers on this day are kind of they're going to be. I don't see a lot of upside with them, I should say. Like I see lots of guys who could be like a perfectly fine third or fourth option, but some of these tight ends, I really like their upside. Like I think part of the reason why we haven't been talking about them going higher is mostly like tight ends just like kind of don't exist in the college game. But there's some great athletes, some guys who have like shown some skills when they've had opportunities. So like it makes perfect sense that teams are hesitant to invest in a guy who just like really hasn't shown a whole lot. But you know, some of these guys I think are going to turn into relevant pass catchers and offenses in the league.
I'm curious who the RB3 is too. I know we know there's like the top two guys, but I'm curious who the league, which guy ends up being the third guy. Does it end up being Spiller? Does it end up being James Cook because of his receiving? I'm really curious to see like that order of the non-Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker running backs.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. And like these guys are going to matter too. And I did not mean to use that phrase the way I did when talking about running backs and using the M word. But like these guys are going to be in rotations. At the least, so it like they're going to get playing time, and like that's a position we know you can hit here. The wide receivers I am interested in seeing. Khalil Shakir is a guy I really like. Like he kind of seems like he could be that that pretty good number 3. He can play the slot. Had really good body control. Wow, I just blanked on who I'm excited to see because that's.
You like Trey Turner, but he's not going to go today, right?
Yes, I do like Trey Turner, but Jalen Tolbert. I do think his skill set is a fun day 2 thing to target. The other on defensive side, Nick Bonitto from Oklahoma, guy I really like. Just kind of one of those, like if you're going to like one of those blitz heavy schemes, is going to be like I thought the Giants might like wait on without Thibodeau on the board. I thought the Giants might wait for like round 2 because he just kind of seems like the perfect Wink Martindale guy. Athletic. It doesn't really have like one-on-one pass rush moves, but when he's put in a good position, can easily get pressure. So that's another guy I think can have a lot of upside in the early day 2. So anyone else we're looking forward to, or
Tolbert was another one that I was going to bring up. I think some of the teams that may have been interested in Treylon Burks in the first round might pivot to Tolbert. Tolbert's smaller, but he has excelled in like the same kind of route tree. Like he's a guy that you're going to try to feed to get the ball in space, and he runs hard with the ball in his hand. So I think that's, if you were hoping your team was going to get Burks, that's a guy to keep an eye on today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they profiled very similarly when I did the target yards added. Just kind of in context, they both kind of were way above what the rest of the receivers in the offense can do, and the offense kind of ran through them in one way or another. So that's certainly going to be he is a fun guy, and I think like we'll see some fun things. And I think that's one of the fun things, like when we saw, like people said this was a bad draft because they're like there wasn't the high, like the clear stars.
We'll always run into guys,
right? But what I'm getting to is like it's deep, and I think there was a lot of like good players, but again, like there just weren't like the very clear like top 5, top 10 guys that we usually see in the draft. But it's pretty deep, and I don't think like
NFL's an opportunity sport.
Right, the difference between some of the guys who were going to go today and some of the guys who went on the back half of the first round, I don't think like the skill is that much different. So I think we're going to see a lot of fun things in day 2 and maybe even heading into day 3.
Yeah, just one last name I wanted to throw out there: defensive tackle Travis Jones from UConn. He's a stud. I mean, I sort of criticized the Eagles for picking Jordan Davis. Travis Jones is sort of like one of those nose tackles that I was saying, like they're always available on day 2, and yet Jones is, although he is a traditional nose tackle, he was a 3-down player at UConn. Like he's already proven that he has the stamina to do that. I was super late to watching any of Travis Jones because obviously he played at UConn. Why on earth would I watch that last fall? But they played Clemson, so obviously that was like what the first game that I pulled up, and he was the best player on the field. When Clemson's offense was on the field with UConn's defense, Travis Jones absolutely obliterated Clemson's offensive line. And to be fair, Clemson's offensive line was one of the reasons they had a down year last year, but still, he's going up against a lot of big-time recruits on a Clemson offensive line and just absolutely destroyed them. So that jumped out to me in a big way. I'm excited to see where he goes.
I made the finals in a 50-team college fantasy league with David Tindall as my quarterback. UConn David
Nice.
Tindall, the Konami code of college football back then.
All right, so yeah, let's. What a note to end on. So thank you everyone for listening. We will have much more written content coming up on the site. We have a lot already going through. We have a roundtable for some thoughts, kind of a lot of what we said here, but some other thoughts and observations about round 1. Rich did a fantasy fallout piece for all the fantasy relevant guys. Again, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, also fantasy for the offensive linemen and what that kind of means for some of the running games and passing games and pass blocking and things like that. So a lot of interesting stuff. You can find a lot of more stuff that Ryan's going to be doing on the site also. So you can find Ryan on Twitter at Ryan_Crystal. You can find Rich on Twitter at WorkReebs. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Pizzuta. Thank you guys for listening.